Welcome back to the Miami Heat Roundtable. My name is Amir. For today's episode, we got Martel. You can find him at the Miami Heat Zone podcast. We got Ernest. You can find him at the Miami Heat Talk. Congrats to both of them. They just both hit 5K subscribers. So don't forget to go to their channels and subscribe. I'm pushing to 2,000, and I'm pissed that I haven't got there yet, but I'm still appreciative for my supporters. So subscribe to my channel so I can get to 2K. Boys, it's been a while since we've had a roundtable. I know Trent is not available, unfortunately, but it's good to see you guys. How are you guys doing?
Great, man.
Hit that subscribe button.
Martel, straight up business.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. Hope everybody's having a great day. I know I've been gone for a minute with the roundtable. Sorry, y'all. Just been crazy busy, but I'm glad we're back here, ready to talk some Miami Heat basketball. Let's rock and roll on another Miami Heat roundtable adventure. Yeah, boy.
Yes, sir. And so the obvious thing that we should talk about first is obviously all the noise around Jimmy Butler. And we know it's noise, and we know it's mostly smoke, but where there's smoke, there typically is fire. But nothing has changed. Jimmy has not requested a trade. The Miami Heat said we're not shopping Jimmy Butler or want to trade him, right? So nothing has actually changed since the offseason when we didn't give Jimmy Butler his extension. And Jimmy, I guess, has said he's not going to sign he's not going to pick up his player option next year. So he wants to test free agency. So the Miami Heat now are in a big dilemma, potentially. And there's a lot of noise with Shams and Bernie Lee and all the different teams that said that he's interested in. And now Jimmy's saying, or according to his agent and Shams, he's interested in 4 destinations. So we don't need to talk about that. I want to go around and ask you guys 2 questions. One, what is your prediction with this Jimmy Butler saga? Do you think he actually will be traded by the trade deadline on February 6th? And the second part is, do you want him to be traded? Like, do you think as a business decision, it makes the most sense for the Miami to do it? Or do you think we should take one last chance with Jimmy Butler in this Jimmy Butler build and try to win a championship for Jimmy Butler? So Ernest, let's start off with you. What do you think is going to happen, and what do you want to happen?
So what I think is going to happen and what I want to happen is kind of the same thing. I think it's all noise. I don't think the Heat are going to trade Jimmy at all. Like, I understand from a business side how it would benefit the Miami Heat. You can potentially get a young asset. You could potentially get a future first-round draft pick by trading Jimmy. But all the teams that are linked, like Golden State, Dallas, Houston, Phoenix, you're not going to get the same investment. You're not going to get the same quality in return. So what I think is going to happen is the same thing I've been saying for weeks. He's going to stay with the Heat. We're going to ride with him. We're going to go all in this year because for the most part, they've been healthy. Jimmy's on a contract year, so he's having a pretty good season. But I think that the Heat are going to go all in with this team. We're going to give it one more shot. It's like we've said before the offseason. This is the last year of the run-it-back mentality. So we're going to see what they have. If they go far, great. We may talk a possible extension with Jimmy. But if they don't, the writing's on the wall. And look, there's no options for Jimmy. All this talk about Jimmy leaving and going somewhere else, where the hell is he going to go? Brooklyn is the only team that has the money to give Jimmy. Why the hell would Brooklyn give Jimmy that money? And why would Jimmy go to Brooklyn? So I see 2 scenarios playing out, which both benefit Miami. He walks in free agency. I know the dramatic people are going to be like, oh, but you're losing Jimmy for nothing. Not true. That's $52 million off your books for next season. You can trade Terry Rozier. Duncan Robinson's not fully guaranteed. So now you can officially start the Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero build. Or option 2, which would benefit both Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat. I'm sure fans forgot about a beautiful thing that's called a sign and trade. So you can wait for the offseason, send Jimmy where he wants to go. He gets the money that he wants, and the Heat get an investment in return. Now, I understand doing the trade mid-season may get the Miami Heat the most quality, like draft picks, young assets, like a Jonathan Kuminga or something like that. I get that. But you still have to give Kuminga all that money for a contract extension. So you're still kind of hampering yourself. You're still going to get other players that are probably going to have multiple years left in their contract. So it's still kind of putting you on a hold. So I think it's either you let him walk or you do a sign and trade. Now, what do I want to happen? That. I don't want to trade Jimmy Butler, you guys. I understand that Jimmy and this team have been mediocre the last 3 regular seasons, but we know what this MFer does in the playoffs. We know. And he didn't get to do it last year. And last year was a blow. I wanted to see Jimmy Butler in the playoffs. So I think for a fan perspective, because even though I have a YouTube channel for the Miami Heat, I'm a fan. I want to see Jimmy Butler in a Miami Heat uniform in the playoffs doing some damage. And if he doesn't, and if we blow it in the playoffs, right off to the sunset. That's my take.
The third option, before you hop in, Martel, too, the third option, too, would be he, for some reason, he's willing to stay because he sees there's no real market, that no one is going to be willing to pay him an average, I would assume, of anywhere close to 45 or to 50. He's going to be making 52 next season, right? And so I don't see him getting 45 even or more. So maybe there's a world. The third option I would say is he takes like a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal where he takes a lower salary, kind of like DeMar DeRozan did.
Yeah,
he's better than DeMar. DeMar is getting like 26 million. Maybe he can do like what Kyle Lowry did at age 35. We gave him 3 years, 90 million. Jimmy, you're going to be making way less than year one than you're 52, but you're getting that extra 60 million across 2 extra years. Would you do a 3-year, 30 million? You'll be here till you're 38. You could retire. I think that's a third option. I agree with you on the other two. But yeah, who the hell knows? And the whole Kuminga thing, I would 100% do that trade if he was on his rookie scale contract still for at least one more year. The fact that he wants a max, didn't get it, and is eligible to at least make 30 million, like, or more, right? Or what he wants. I don't think he's worth it. And he could be a rental. So like, if we had a friendlier contract with him and didn't have to worry about that, I would say, okay, give us 1 to 2 picks, give us him, Wiggins, and Pods, whatever. Let's do it. But anyway, Martel, I know your answer to the first part. We had an episode yesterday, you and I, but like, what do you think is going to happen versus what you want to happen?
I mean, listen, he's going to stay for the rest of the season. This will probably be the last run. The only thing that can benefit the Miami Heat is if he takes that like team-friendly deal. I just think that if he wants to win a championship and he wants to have the proper roster around him, he's gonna have to take that team-friendly deal. I don't see him turning down $52 million guaranteed. I really don't, because like it's kind of like what Ernest said. There's really no team, and especially with this new CBA, you can't have all these guys making 30, 40 mil per on a roster. It's not gonna work unless your team is willing to pay way over the luxury tax, and that's not even including adding role players to that roster. So I don't really see Jimmy Butler going anywhere. I think he's going to opt into the $52 million. And then maybe after that, they'll probably come up with maybe a 1, maybe 2-year deal. Because it really just comes down to how much basketball does Jimmy Butler even want to play?
That's the fourth option, I guess, technically. Anybody can change their mind, right? So even though he says he doesn't want to pick up that player option, 52 million, I mean, he's not going to get it anywhere else. So what do you want to happen, though, as a Heat fan? Do you want him to get traded this season so we can actually get young assets, draft capital, expiring contracts, so we could build for the future around Jimmy and Bam? He's the oldest guy on our team at this point, besides Kevin Love.
Win this year, ship him off. If we do not win, you trade him. Because then there's really no – that means that we're running this thing back 6, 7 years in a row. For what? We've been running this thing since the bubble. For what? If we do not win this year, you trade him and you try to get as many assets as you can. There's always going to be a fool out there that's going to be willing to take these guys. They're paying Paul George. They're paying DeMar DeRozan, guys who've done less than Jimmy Butler these past few years. So I'm sure we'll be able to convince some team out there to take Jimmy Butler. You guys are right about Kuminga. If the Golden State Warriors don't want to pay him, I don't want to pay him either. That just makes no sense to me. And they're, like-minded like the Heat. If they don't see anything in him, I am not paying that guy no max deal.
No.
So if we do not win the championship this year, you trade Terry and you trade Jimmy and you start rebuilding and you get all the assets that you can and you move into the future.
Yep. So this season's been a typical Miami Heat frustrating season where we've lost to some bad teams. Not as many as the past seasons, but we've lost to Detroit twice in overtime. We don't need to go into the details. We lost to the Toronto Raptors in one of the games that we played them. Those 3 games alone right there would put the Heat at 16-8, and that would be third place. We would be third. Just those games. I'm not even talking about the Knicks game at home when we're up by 13 and blew it. At the game against the Kings, we're up by 13 and then you all know what happened there. We got a 30-foot shot off at the buzzer from Terry. The Suns game, we're up by 15 and we don't even get a shot off. Right? There's so many games that we were up against the Bucks, up by 15. We've blown 4 or 5 15-point games in the second half. So we could be like 19-5. That's obviously not what our record is today, but we're 6th seed, right? And we're relatively healthy, and we're top 10 in offense and defensive rating. That is insane. I think our record should be better, and it's frustrating that our record is not better, being a top 10 offense for the first time in a few years in this build. Not many teams are top 10 in both. The only ones that are have way better records than us. It's Boston, it's like OKC, it's Cleveland. But anyway, since this is the last hoorah with Jimmy Butler, we just said, what are some reasonable trades and moves that we can do that can help us improve and make a run and avoid the play-in? So kind of like that Jay Crowder, Iguodala trade we did, which kind of helped us get to the finals in that bubble year. What is a realistic trade target that you think the Miami Heat should focus on? Because Terry Rozier, now Duncan are kind of in the rumor mill of people we can let go. So Ernest, who would you like to add if you can pick one kind of like role player type player that's reasonable to help us make a run in the playoffs?
Nikola Vucevic from Chicago. If the Miami Heat can work out a deal with Chicago where they can get Terry Rozier, because the numbers work. Vuce is making $20 million. Terry's making 24. The Heat are a first apron team, but the trade with Thomas Bryant, it brought them down from under the second apron. They're like about $3.7 million under the second apron. So now they have a little bit of flexibility. They can't take back more money in a trade because they're a first apron team, but they wouldn't be doing that. So you would send Terry Rozier, who's making $24.9 million. You probably attach an asset, maybe a pick swap, or maybe you might have to do someone like a Nikola Jovic. I know Heat fans might not be open to that, but Vooch gives you immediate help. This is a guy that can score, that can rebound, he can facilitate, he can allow Bam to move to the power forward position, which is something we've all been clamoring for. He's 7 foot. He could slide to that center role. He could even come off the bench for Bam. But with the emergence of Drew Smith, and I know, like, this is crazy because before the season, we were laughing about it. Like, a lot of us were even saying, give Isaiah Stevens the two-way contract over Drew Smith. Look what Drew Smith's been doing this year. He's a viable backup point guard in the NBA. Tyler Hero is showing that he can hold his own as a point guard, starting as point guard. With Duncan and Tyler starting in the backcourt, you got two guys over 6'5". So now Drew Smith can be your backup point guard. Now you can trade Terry Rozier. Eric Spoelstra is not ready to play Kel'el Ware. I know he's raw. I know he's young. He went to the G League. Maybe it'll be his time in the second half of the season. But you need size. This is the same problem we had in the 2020 finals when we were playing against guys like JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, and Anthony Davis. It's the same problem we had in the 2023 NBA finals against the Joker. We've not addressed that issue. We drafted a guy who was supposed to address that issue. He ain't playing. So you need size. That's the thing that's going to help you win this championship. Bam Adebayo is an undersized center. So he needs help. So if you're able to get Nikola Vucevic, I can never pronounce his name right. I'll call him Vooch.
Vucevic.
Vucevic, there we go. If you can get him, then this would be an Andre Iguodala, Jay Crowder type of trade. He's not a superstar. He's a B+ player. And you put a guy like that on this roster, I guarantee you, we would be a contender in the East.
Shit, I think that's technically better than Andre Iguodala and Jay Crowder. He's averaging 20 and 10. You know, we got Iguodala at like an older age, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, Martel, I think that's a great, I would love Vooch on this team. That would be huge. Martel, who's your realistic trade target, you think?
Well, listen, before we even get to the trades, this Miami Heat team needs to get it together. The East is pretty weak right now. Outside of Boston and Cleveland, now the Milwaukee Bucks are starting to pick it up. You're telling me that the Miami Heat can't be a top 5 seed? If we cannot be a top 5 seed with Orlando, they're missing 2 of their best players. And outside of that, who is really like in the East? The Pacers, they're not the same anymore. Nope. There is no reason, even before we talk trades, there is no reason why this Miami Heat team with Jimmy, Bam, Tyler, and Terry, and the role players that we have, they cannot get to a 5th seed. I just think that's absolutely ridiculous. And same thing with Jaime and Jovic. We have to figure out what we have in them right now. If you're not going to play Jovic, you trade him. You know, like, listen, like if Jaime, which he could be playing through injury because he's known to do that, But if he's healthy and he's not really showing us what he can do, trade him too.
I think Jaime Jaquez, the problem with Jaime Jaquez is Terry Rozier. Like, you guys got to understand, Jaime Jaquez took over last year because of injuries. Caleb Martin was out. Haywood Highsmith was out. Jimmy was out a lot of games. So he had to step up. Now, there's one basketball, and there's so many people out there that do a lot of things. So I understand that we're looking at Jaime Jaquez as he's having a down year. I don't think so. I just think that he's trying to fit in a certain role, but he needs more. I think if the Miami Heat were to trade Terry Rozier, it's going to open more for Jaime Jaquez. He's a Swiss Army knife. He can have that Caleb Martin role. It's just that there's so many players that Spo has to play. So he's just trying, like I've said this in my channel, this team has so many C+, B- level players coming off the bench. Spo doesn't know what rotation to go with because they're all pretty much the same. So the first 20 games, you could tell that he was trying to figure it out. He's kind of figured that out. But Jaime Jaquez doesn't get the time that he needs because, one, Drew Smith is playing way better defensively. So that's why he gets more minutes, because we all know that Spo loves defense. Terry Rozier is the scorer that comes off the bench. But what we saw before in the beginning of the season when Terry and Tyler were starting and Jaime was the sixth man off the bench still wasn't working because, like I said, there's one basketball. We need to get somebody off this team who's a primary scorer, who has that score-like mentality like Terry Rozier, to open the floodgates for other players. Tyler Hero balling. Tyler Hero's that guy. He's our number one option. Jimmy's the number two option. Bam Adebayo is that he's finally got into that role like I've said the last couple of years. The Horace Grant, Dennis Rodman role, the solid number three option. After those three guys, Jaime Jaquez needs to be next on the bracket. But he can't because Terry Rozier is that guy. So if you get Terry off this team, trade him for Vooch. Allow Vooch to be the guy who grabs the rebounds, has a defensive presence, can score at times in the paint. I think this would free up Jaime Jaquez more. I just think the problem with Jaime is that it's just too much players. Too much players.
Well, his threes are also down. I think that, he said he worked on his threes. Terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Trash.
And then his
What is he,
back.
Martel? Three for the last 30? He's like 3 for the last 30 in the last 12 games. Something insane.
He has no back.
Trash.
He has no back. The only thing that I've ever seen him do for the past 2 years is that spin move. I really haven't seen anything outside of that. So he, that's really what it is to me. Don't get me wrong. Maybe that could be the issue. It's just that even with Terry on the floor, I'm still looking for him to get to the free throw line. I'm still looking for him to make his open shots, just the basics of basketball. But maybe
I agree with both of you, though.
He's Jimmy Butler. Jaime Jaquez's game is exactly like Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler had no shot his first few years in the NBA. If you look at Jimmy Butler's start of his career, I'm not going to say defense because Jimmy had way more defensive effort than Jaime. But if you look at their trajectory, it's kind of the same. Jimmy started with the Chicago team, and he was kind of like one of the last guys in the bench and eventually moved his way up to be the star. I still think that's going to be Jaime Jaquez. You saw flashes of that last year. I think this year, Jaime's a team guy. Jaime's a guy, he seems like he's no BS, he's no drama, he does whatever he can for the team. So you can tell that Jaime, he's kind of taking a step back to fill other roles for the team. He's not a shooter. I know he's worked on that in the offseason. Jaime's not a 3-and-D guy. I know that's what he's trying to be. That's not what he is. He's not that guy. His game is like Jimmy Butler's. He needs to have more opportunities. He needs to have more shots. He needs to have the ball in his hands a little more. That's not going to happen until Jimmy's out of this team, until we free up more for him. That's what I'm saying. Trade Terry. You need to get a guy who's a primary scorer. We have too many of those on this team. You got to get a guy like that out, fill him in for a player that can do all the dirty work, the little things that we don't need, a rebounder, which is something we really don't have, Vooch. So if you're able to get Scary Terry out of here for somebody that can fill a role, I think it'll open more space for Jaime Jaquez. I really think he's our sixth man. He should be the sixth man coming off the bench. But it's Terry because it just didn't work in the starting lineup.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with both sentiments. Drew Smith is averaging 30 minutes now per game off the bench. Jaime's minutes are going down. But also to Martel's point, his 3-point slump is really big. And he's also there's 1 year of film on him now, so they've done the scouting. They know he likes to do that spin move, those pump fakes. He has that great footwork, but if he's not scoring in the paint, he's not scoring anywhere else. Like his mid range shot, those numbers are down. His 3-point shooting is down. It's a sophomore slump, but also I think it's partly that the league is scouting him now. Obviously, same with what's his name from the Warriors. I say Pods because I don't know how to say his name.
Brandon Pod, that's what we'll call him.
Whatever, you know what I mean? Like he's having a down year too because like they've scouted for him. They know what he wants to do, the spots he wants to get in. So I think it's part of that. And I agree with you, though, Ernest. Though he doesn't have the same role. He's not getting the same amount of minutes. There hasn't been serious injuries where he's had an opportunity to play 35, 36 minutes. There's been a few games where he's played like 28 minutes or 29 minutes. And you'll see, though, there's only a few games where he's had 19 points, 16 points, 15 points. Most of them are all duds. So I think it's a combination of what Martel said. Like he needs to work on his game a little bit more, become a better shooter. And it's like what you said. That shit sometimes takes time. There's got Kawhi Leonard averaged 9-10 points his first season. Then he eventually learned how to shoot that mid-range and had that Kobe fadeaway like year 5, year 6. Like after Duncan and what's it called? What's the Frenchie's name? Tony Parker and Manny. Once those guys left and he took over that team, then you saw how dominant he became. And some players develop shots later. So hopefully Jaime can figure shit out. We have the best developmental system in the NBA. So
I just think he's trying to play a role that's not fitted for him.
Exactly.
That's what I think.
That's part of it too. And he's slumping, like Bam was slumping. So hopefully we'll get out of it. But anyway, I think that's all we have for today's episode. Thanks for hopping on, guys. It's been a while since we've had a roundtable. Hopefully we'll get one with Trent and all of us back on next week. And big game tomorrow. Miami Heat finally playing. Like this whole Shakira thing, this whole NBA Cup thing. There's been like 3 stints where the Miami Heat played a game and didn't play for 4, 5, 6 days, right? So I guess that's good for Jimmy and Kevin Love and older guys to get some rest. But Heat are playing the Thunder tomorrow. So let's see if we can get a bounce back win after losing a heartbreaking game to the Detroit Pistons in overtime. We don't need to talk about that shit because that game pissed me off. But we'll see. This will be a big litmus test, though, honestly. Like, I hope we can compete and I hope we can win. Any predictions before we hop off?
I think the Heat are going to shock the world. I think because this is the most freaking Miami Heat thing that we do.
Of course.
You lose to a terrible team and then you beat a great team. That's just something we've been doing the last few years. I wouldn't be shocked if the Heat beat OKC, but realistically, chances are.
Stop it.
Hey, but yo, I ride with my squad. I'm confident. I believe in these guys. I think they can beat anyone if they just play the right way. Like Bill Belichick says, if you do your job, if you play the right way for 48 minutes, if you play the right way for 48 minutes, you can beat any team. In football, they say any given Sunday. In the NBA, I say any given game. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what their record is. These are professional NBA players. Anybody can win. Anybody can win if you just play the right way for 48 minutes. OKC is going to be tough, but I think we can do it.
Every goddamn team has that mentality, and every Miami Heat scrub killer from these crap. Dude, Malik Beasley had 28 points against us. The game before that, he had 5.
Malik Beasley, Nicholas Batum, what's this guy? Peyton Pritchard. Back in the days in Chicago, this guy what's his name? Oh my God, I can't remember his name. Andre Nocioni. It's always always the role players that kill the Miami Heat. We always lock down their stars. We always play good, but then it's this fool Anato who's not even known drops 30 on Miami. It's our luck.
Simone Fontecchio, whatever the guy from
Detroit. Oh my God, I hate you. Stop.
Martel, predictions? I think the Heat are going to lose, unfortunately, because the Thunder.
Nah, we going to win. Get that dub.
All right, he's got the win. I say we lose. What do you think, a tie? Can we tie in basketball?
Nah, listen.
Called overtime.
Like what Ernest said, like if we don't come out the right way, that's a loss all day long.
Facts.
SBA and all those dudes, those guys are hungry. They're pissed that they lost the NBA Cup. They want to win a championship. They're one of the best teams in the NBA, so we do have to take that very seriously.
Yep. Let's see what happens.
Make sure
hit
that subscribe button. Make sure that you guys go to Ernest's channel. Make sure that you guys go to Amir's channel. hit that subscribe button, and thank you guys for all the support.
We got 5,000 subscribers. Help Amir to get to 2,000 by the end of the year. Come on, let's go.